Welcome back to the Astrology Report, this time for July 24th through July 30th of 2023. My name is Cam White, if you don't know me already. Thank you guys so much for being here. Make sure you like this video, supports the channel a lot, and comment below. Let me know how last week was. Last week was absolutely wild, absolutely crazy, and now we're really in the midst of a very wild summer. So let me know in the comments what's been going on for you. I really want to know how Venus retrograde's been affecting you, the nodal shift that we just had, and we have quite an intense week this week, actually, although not a lot on the surface is happening. But let's just go ahead and jump right into it. So we're starting the week off on Monday with just the moon in Libra, not really doing anything. It's not void. A void moon is when the moon is transiting typically the last few degrees of a sign and is no longer making an aspect to any planets. The moon isn't void, but it's not going to make any aspects to any planets until Tuesday. So it's kind of just hanging out. The way I look at it is moon's in Libra, right? Our emotions are much more focused on one-on-one relationships, connections, balance, fairness. What's interesting, though, is later this week, actually when we get to tomorrow on Tuesday, we're going to have our first moon K2 conjunction. So while I'd love to sit here and say the moon's in Libra, it should be, you know, just nice and pleasant, it's not doing much, there's kind of like, I don't want to say a reckoning, but a build up to something, you know, that has to happen. And it's kind of like, as the South Node is now in Libra and we're making all of these changes, I think as the moon goes into Libra and starts heading towards the South Node, it's like we know what's coming next and we know what we must do now. And I think Monday is just kind of sitting in that. It's kind of like the day before game day, the day before, you know, you're going to make a big decision or a big move and nothing else is really going on. It's almost like the quiet before the storm is the way that I would really look at Monday. And I think with Monday, there's more that I want to talk about, but it's all happening on Tuesday. So, like, while the moon is hanging out in Libra, there is a sense of, you know, I think the calm before the storm is really the best way to put it, because the moon's in Libra, right? Like, everything's nice, everything's everything's fair, but you know that a big storm is coming. You know that a significant shift is happening. So let's just go ahead and jump into Tuesday. So we get to Tuesday, and the moon is then first going to make a sextile to Mercury. Then it is going to conjoin Venus. I mean, my bad. It's going to sextile Mercury and Venus. It is then going to conjoin the South Node, and then it's going to go into Scorpio and trine Saturn. So this is kind of a wild ride. Like, you know, I talk a lot about like when the moon is just kind of making a bunch of hits to planets. It's just kind of like pinball. But this is a wild ride for a few reasons. One is this is our first moon K2 conjunction while the South Node is in Libra. K2 is South Node, K2 are the same thing. Rahu and the North Node are the same thing, just different words. But after the moon conjoins the South Node and it ingresses in Scorpio, this is our first moon in Scorpio transit without the South Node. So it's kind of weird because the moon will go into its sign of fall where it typically doesn't do all that well. But I think there's going to be this sense of like freedom, like it's going to feel better now that the South Node isn't there, which is weird. Like it's weird to say that the moon in Scorpio will feel better than possibly the moon in Libra. But before that happens, the moon will make a sextile to Mercury and Venus. Now that Venus is retrograde, and here on Thursday, we'll actually have Mercury conjoining Venus. We're starting to put the pieces together of what is changing during this Venus retrograde. What evaluation shift are you going through? What do you no longer find pleasure in? Or how are you understanding pleasure? How are you understanding fun and connection and creativity in a different way? And I think as the moon sextiles Mercury, there's a little bit of an understanding. While the moon's in Libra, there is a bigger focus on relationships, right? Like Libra is the relationship sign. And so maybe there's a conversation with someone and it's a sextile, right? It's not like a direct one-on-one, you know, argument or confrontation. It's just in passing. Someone might say something or, you know, give you an idea. You know, it's so funny. Someone can tell you the same thing over and over, but you can hear that same information from someone else and you like listen to it. Like if the same person that tells you over and over, you won't listen to them. But if someone else tells it to you in passing, it like sticks with you. That's almost how I look at this. And I think as the moon makes that sextile to Mercury and then also sextiles Venus, there's just a better connection and a better understanding of like what relationships are changing, what desires are changing. And after the moon, leaves that sextile with Venus, it conjoins the South Node. Like there's, if you've had a consultation with me, I like to say that I play lawyer. I like to build up a case for certain things. Like I like to find how many transits or activations all sort of point down the same road. And it's not just Venus going retrograde. It's the South Node going through Venus's sign. So it's not just, oh yeah, we are changing, what desire and pleasure looks like for us. We aren't just taking a break. It's like the South Node is here. There is a purge. There is a release of an understanding. There is an imbalance that is happening. And imbalance is, imbalance is balance. This is something you have to think about. It's like, when it comes to the earth and ecosystems, like, a lot of people like to talk about how everything's supposed to be in balance. And if you take away one thing, it won't be in balance. But nature has a funny way of, when something is out of balance, redirecting it into a balance. And so the reason I'm even using that as an example is like sometimes things don't have to be balanced. Sometimes things don't have to be within harmony. Sometimes things don't have to be, I don't want to say boring, but as the South Node goes through Libra, it's like not everything's going to be, beautiful. Like, for example, all of this stuff here. I haven't moved into this house yet because I'm actually moving into a different house. Long story, I'm going to be giving you guys a life update video, which I haven't done in years here pretty soon. So I'll explain more about this. But I can't worry about all of this stuff not being put away, especially if I have somewhere else to be and I have somewhere else to go. But I have other priorities. I have other things I have to do. And so some things are going to be out of balance because I have other things that are a priority. And I just think as the moon conjoins the South Node, there is this like, you had higher expectations and those expectations weren't met. And it may not be your fault. It may not be their fault, but it just is the way that it is. And so there's sort of a melancholy feeling of, it's like, when you hype yourself up for an event or a party and it's just not what you thought. Or like, even like if you're going on a first date from someone online and you meet them and it's kind of a catfish and, maybe they're nice, but you're not really all that into them. It's just disappointing. It's not as fun as you wanted it to be. It's not as grand as you wanted it to be. And I just think the moon conjoining the South Node is understanding like, I can't have everything in balance. Not everyone's going to get what they want. You may not get what you want and someone else might get what they want or vice versa. But there's a level of, hey, this isn't a perfect situation, but it is what it is. That's what I do like about the South Node in Libra is there is this like mutual understanding of like nothing's perfect. Nothing's going to be perfect. But with the moon conjoining the South Node, there's just this kind of like, again, like a melancholy. It's not vicious. It's not anger. It's not, like disappointment is probably a better word for it. But then the moon goes into Scorpio and there is pain there. With the moon being about our emotions and our body and it's going into its sign of fall, like Scorpio, like, deep seated emotions that we can't let go of and pain and sorrow. Now that the South Node's there, it's almost more enjoyable, which is funny, right? Because when the South Node was in Scorpio, it's like, it's almost like a drag. Like, I don't want to feel this way anymore. I don't want to be emo. Like I need to let go of these deep rooted emotions. But I think as the moon goes into Scorpio, it's not nearly as like vicious. It's just a little sad and a little painful. And, it's kind of like when, you're ending a relationship and like there is like the, the disconnect, the, toiling over past emotions. How could you've done different things differently in the past? And like the moon in Scorpio transit this time around is just sitting with those negative feelings, which I think so many people try to avoid. And there's a difference between working through them and avoiding them. And there's a difference between understanding them and avoiding them. And I just think as the moon's in Scorpio, like just don't avoid it. If you try your whole life to avoid negative emotions, well, now your thought process is negative emotions. That's what you're focusing on. That's what you're going to have in your reality. So rather than trying to avoid it, sit in it and use it for something. You know, do you ever want to feel that way again? Do you ever want to, like, why did you put yourself in that situation in the first place? And look at how you can use, like, this is something I love about the Scorpio stuff is Mars rules Scorpio. Mars is all about energy. How can we use resentment or anger or frustration or these deep-seated wounds for energy to move forward, to make something different, to change things for the better? And then the moon will trine Saturn. So there is this level of putting the pieces together. Like Saturn in Pisces it's kind of like solving a riddle. But let's say the riddle's in like 4 or 5 parts. And like you start to understand one part of this riddle. You may not understand all of the parts, but one part of it is at least, you know, making a little bit more sense. But the big highlight that we have on Tuesday is the North Node and the South Node are going to be squaring Pluto. This happens all week long. Now, this is the very rare time that I will bring up a transit like this that I think is important. What we say is when a planet is squaring the nodes, it's actually at the bending of the nodes. The way I look at the bending of the nodes is if the North Node is this direction that you're super focused on and want to consume, and the South Node is like this past and things that are holding you back and that you need to let go of, a planet being in the middle is like making that turning point. Now, Pluto, technically, this is where it gets confusing because the nodes actually move backwards, and eventually the North Node is going to conjoin Pluto, but that's not until 2026, 2027, I don't think. That when we're going to have eclipses on Pluto and Aquarius, that's going to be super wild for the tech dystopia stuff. I've looked at that a long time ago, but the nodes are like emergency situations where, you know, when you get a call from someone and they're panicking and they go through, you know, they're having like a crazy moment and they like put all of that emotion on you, or like because you're a human being, you wear that as well. Like that's what the nodes do. And now that the nodes have shifted, there's like all of a sudden, like, this is now an emergency. I need to focus on this. This is what, like, you know, for whatever reason, you're just like freaking out about and need to go towards. But with Pluto at the bending, and I would argue at the north bending, since it's going to be heading more towards the North Node, Pluto is about that fear, about the power, about the control. And Pluto, you know, it's so funny. I've been thinking a lot about power and how it's a word that there's terms in the astrology world that I think people just throw onto planets and don't give them much more thought beyond that. But if Pluto's the smallest planet, it's so funny how we give the tiniest things in our life all of this power. And why do we do that? Like Pluto, you can't even see it with the naked eye. You could barely see it with a telescope. I don't even know if you could see it with a telescope, to be honest with you. At least one that you could buy from like a store, unless like you got like some straight up NASA shit. But we give these tiny little things all of this power. And as Pluto's at the bending of the nodes, this is kind of like a crisis moment of like, something needs to shift here. Are you going to let the fear, the, you know, unknown, these little tiny things that you give so much of your power away to control every aspect of your life? Or are you going to, you know, again, transmutate that into actual power for yourself? There's something so powerful about breakthrough moments. This is why I keep my astrology more personal development focused. And I've gotten some negative comments about that, which is so funny to me. Like, okay, you guys don't want to do personal development, so that means you're just here to watch astrology and be like, this is why my life sucks. And it's totally not me. It's everybody else in my life. It's totally you. You're absolutely in control of whether or not your life is great or not. It's just a matter of getting out of your own way. And I look at, and this node squaring Pluto thing is happening all week. It's really hits on Tuesday, but it's happening all week because Pluto and the nodes are kind of moving at the same pace right now. But you know that there's a direction shift. You feel it in your gut. And there's just certain things that you have to either let yourself crumble to, which I would suggest not. Or, for example, and I've said this before, I forgot when I said this. Maybe it was on my Pluto and Aquarius video, or maybe it was in a weekly. But if you have a bear coming up to you, like about to attack you, like you've got a few different options. But one of probably the better options is, you know, like besides running away, that bear will fucking chase you. but like standing up, screaming, throwing your arms around. And I'm not giving you how to handle bear advice. I've never handled a fucking bear before. I'm just going off like what I know as far as what other people say. But I use that as an analogy as like, if you're facing that, who are you going to be? Are you going to run away, or are you going to like face that and summon up all of your power and strength, that primal power and strength to overcome that challenge? I think that is something that is super subtly going on behind the scenes all of this week. So like when you're stuck in these decisions or stuck in this, situation where you're like, you're not sure what to do, like you're really going to have to muster a lot of strength and courage. And you guys have all of the power that you need. You just have to tap into it, and you actually have to believe in it. And the only way you're going to believe in it is if you act upon it. It's not about going, oh, like, like you can't just have a belief about something about yourself and not have any sort of evidence behind it. If you lack confidence, it's like that. If you especially lack confidence, this is the time when you need to actually do things that are going to give you that confidence. Maybe stepping up for yourself and like not being afraid of these changes and embracing the uncomfortability, embracing the fear, embracing the suck will actually make you feel more confident about everything else that you're going on with your life. So that's happening on Tuesday and all week, and we'll talk more about that as we go on. We get to Wednesday, and as the moon's still in Scorpio, it's going to make a sextile to Mars, and it's going to go opposite Jupiter. This is interesting moon action to me because I think as the moon's in Scorpio, and again, we're really like deep with our emotions. Like sextiling Mars in Virgo is like, it's kind of like when something's so painful, like you just need to get your fucking act together and just be like, I need to do this. I need to do that. I need to like go. Organize. It's like, have you ever like gone through something so painful that like you, to cope with it, you did something that you've put on the back burner for so long? You're like, I don't know what else to do, so I need to take care of like this paperwork that's been sitting here for 10 years or whatever, just something where you can deeply focus on it. That's what I really like about the moon sextiling Mars, is there's something about being in that deep-seated emotion and using that as an advantage point. And Mars in Virgo wants to be surgical. Mars in Virgo wants to be, very specific. I think Wednesday is an excellent day to channel all of those negative emotions, or just channel those deep emotions into something much more productive, something that you need to take care of. But then the moon goes opposite Jupiter. And, while oppositions are quote unquote bad, I don't really believe in good or bad astrology. I believe things are what they are. And while an opposition is two planets like literally at odds with one another, I kind of look at the moon in Scorpio is the roots have to go as deep and as wide as they need to for the tree to grow. And I've talked about this book before, but Deep Work by Cal Newport. It's not necessarily about this, but the Deep Work book by Cal Newport, which is an amazing read, is like sometimes in order to get everything that you need to get done, like you need to completely isolate yourself. You need to completely detach from reality and just like focus on your work. The way I look at the moon opposite Jupiter is this is the deep work here. And when I say deep work, I'm talking about like, are you just going to let this pass by? Or are you going to let these changes actually like make a difference in you? Are you going to go another year being the same fucking person, having the same, character deficiencies, having the same attitude, the same bullshit attitude you have? Or is it bad enough to do something about it? I love saying that to people because people get really triggered by it. But if you're not willing to change it, it's not bad enough. If your situation is so bad, but you're not willing to do whatever it takes to get out, it's not bad enough. You haven't gone through it enough. I know a lot of you are going to be pissed at that, but that's the fucking truth. Because if it was bad enough, you'd do something about it. And I look at this moon in Scorpio opposite Jupiter and Taurus is like your negative emotions and your deep held down emotions go like, are you going to let those, like, are you going to let that deep, like sit in the pain? Do you want to make the change or do you not want to make the change? And I think as it goes opposite Jupiter and Taurus, there's a level of this is a moment that you can use to grow the things that you want to grow. It's not going to be easy. none of this is easy. Like that's that's what's really frustrating just doing I've been having a lot of frustrations just about the astrology and spiritual world in general. So many of you guys are just spiritually bypassing, and it's just frustrating. But it's like, are you willing to go that deep to make things as good as you want to? Like, again, no one, if everyone looks at the, for example, like look at society right now. We have these beautiful cities. Well, again, cities suck. I'm just fucking using an example here. But we have these beautiful cities, and we don't even understand the infrastructure that it takes. Like, just for you to have clean water. Do you know how much gross shit has to happen underneath the streets in order for you just to turn on your water faucet and for you to have clean water? It's nasty shit, but that's what it takes. And so I look at this moon opposite Jupiter as like, hey, in order for you to have on the surface all of these beautiful things, are you willing to do what it takes to be there? And it's not comfortable. It's not fun, but that's what hard work is. And like, you can either embrace it and make it build your character, or you can resent it and just sit in a little, negative spiral of negative emotions and just do nothing. So we get to Thursday, and on Thursday, the moon will go opposite Uranus. It will then trine Neptune. It will square Venus and Mercury, and then go into Sag. All types of lunar transits on Thursday. I think the moon, I think we're just going to be kind of everywhere on Thursday, like from the morning to the night. The moon will go opposite Uranus. Call before you dig. It's what I keep thinking of the moon in Scorpio opposite Uranus and Taurus. You hit the wrong pipe, you can blow up or completely get electrocuted or take down the whole power for the city. You might be digging so far down. And let's look at this on a negative way. If you're digging so far down, well, you might just spiral. Like if you're thinking like a negative situation happened and then you start going, well, my parents did this and I grew up this way and bad. Well, then you're just going to spiral. And there's no point. There is no point into going all the way back to your childhood and back to all this bullshit. None of that shit even fucking matters at this point. But on a more positive note, if you're digging down, doing that deep work, like you might find yourself in a situation that could completely uplift you from that. Like moon opposite Uranus it's a gamble, right? If you're going to put all your money on black, well, you might just lose it all on black. If you place your bets right, everything might go a little bit more your way. Now, with the moon opposite Uranus, I look at this as much more like unstable. Like, again, if you are doing that deep-seated, like if you are making this the best that you can, accidents still happen. Like, I always say this, like when you're about to make a big change in your world, whatever that is, it's like right when you do it, the universe just fucking throws something at your face to deal with. And it's like, are you really about that? And that's how I look at the moon opposite Uranus, is like, you are going to be given random challenges that you're going to have to face, and it's probably not going to be easy. But do not let that stop you. The moon will then trine Neptune. Again, this is kind of part of the spiraling thing, is like you can't just start, envisioning stories and gassing yourself up on all this negative stuff that doesn't really need to happen. But the moon trining Neptune, I think, is also really positive for like, you can make the best out of a worse situation. Like there is a healthy level of delusion that you can take on. But then the moon will square Venus and Mercury, while Venus and Mercury are in Leo. The way I look at this is, okay, Mercury and Venus are in Leo. We're really talking with, really being prideful, really being full of ourselves, trying to do things in the most authentic way. Yes, that could borderline on egotistical. But the moon squaring Venus and Mercury is just so like uncomfortable. If you are kind of doing the same thing as you were doing a couple weeks ago, I think there's a level of uncomfort that comes up. That's just like, I actually don't like this. I actually like feel deeply like disgusted by this. But then the moon goes into Sag, and you're just going to have to deal with that uncomfortability. And then once the moon goes into Sag, there's a lot more freedom involved. But the other highlight that we have on Thursday is this is when Mercury conjoins Venus. And this is what I think is important, is because at the same time Mercury conjoins Venus, we have the moon in Scorpio squaring it. And I said this in my Venus retrograde video. If you guys haven't watched that by now, you should. But Mercury conjoining Venus is like having that mental connection of like, oh, this is what I'm seeing differently. I don't like this anymore. I need to do something different. And I think the moon in Scorpio squaring it is just like, just disgusted with yourself. Just like, this is gross. I don't like this. Get this away from me. Like for me, I think I've talked about this a few times. People in my personal life know about this, but I always say like back in 2020, I had a schizo moment where like I was in the shower and it came from like two things. One, I had like 6 plastic bottles. I had like a face wash, I had a shampoo, a conditioner, a body wash. And one thing that I had a schizo moment about was like the fucking plastics. There's so much plastic everywhere. Why do I have so much plastic? This is not like my monkey brain came out of me and I was just like, I can't do this anymore. What is with the plastic? And then the other part of that was the smells. Your face wash, your shampoo, your conditioner, your body wash, your deodorant, your cologne, it all smells differently. And I just like it just disgusted me. I threw everything out like that day, and I just like did immense research. I'm like, I need to find products that don't smell. I need to find more natural products that aren't just using bullshit plastic. And you know, I'm now way beyond that, but like I just got disgusted. I literally I freaked out. Like, it's so funny looking back. Like I don't freak out mentally about a lot of things, but I legitimately freaked out about that. Like I was not comfortable or okay. And that's how I look at Thursday with the moon squaring Mercury and Venus is you're going to kind of freak out. Like something is not right. Something is not what you want it to be. And that's not always a bad thing. Like I'm grateful for that situation because now I'm like all on the natural products. I don't use a bunch of fucking plastic that for no fucking reason. All of that kind of stuff. But that's Thursday. We get into Friday. The moon will trine the sun, right? And then it will square Saturn and square Mars. Friday's a tough one because while the sun's in Leo, the moon's in Sag, there's this like very passionate, very outgoing, you know, solar lunar energy of just like wanting to be expressive and wanting to, you know, be ambitious and have fun and like live from your heart. But then the moon will square Saturn and it'll square Mars. There's a lot of work to do before we can have fun. The moon making that square to Saturn is, again, you can't just run away from all of your problems. There is no running away. But then the moon separating from Saturn and squaring Mars is like all of the specifics might be overwhelming to where you just want to avoid everything. I think Friday will be challenging to not want to avoid some of that harder work. I think the thing is you just have to do what you can with what you have. Pick something that's at least exciting enough. Like we all have 10 billion things on our to-do list that we have to do. And I think if you're trying to get them all done right here, right now, I think you're going to get really overwhelmed. You can't really run away from it, but then also the work that you have to do, it's like, oh, there's so much meticulous stuff and all of these details. And, you know, it's just frustrating because I don't know all of the specifics. You kind of just have to do what you can. I think the moon's in a tough place on this day. There's just a level of like wanting to avoid and have fun. So maybe that is what you need to do. But I think there's going to be, in hindsight, issues with that, of course. But on Friday, the last highlight that we have this week is Mercury ingresses into Virgo. I'm loving Mercury in Virgo this year. Yes, it will retrograde in Virgo. Yes, I will have a video about that. But I don't think it's bad. I mean, we just had Mars go into Virgo, and we had all these problems, right? And it's going opposite Saturn, so there was a lot of tough situations that we had to deal with. Mercury is here to clean all of that up. It's like Mars and Virgo is like, I need the bullet points. I need the specifics in order to act. But it's not until Mercury goes into Virgo where we can like clearly understand the situation at hand. We actually can write down an orderly list of everything that we need to get done. Like Mercury in Virgo is like having the mindset and the headspace to organize everything and get everything very clear. And all Mercury is doing is cleaning up the mess that Mars is making this time around. And that involves a retrograde. So there is this kind of review and this reflection. So like, let Mars in Virgo happen. Like, don't avoid it. Like, see all these little problems, see all these little tiny things. We're going to be reviewing that and we're going to be changing all that up here next month anyway. So I think as Mercury goes into Virgo, there's at least like a lot of mental clarity coming to the picture and not just feeling like, oh my God, this is so frustrating. It's like, okay, this is a little bit frustrating, but I actually have the mindset and the willingness to think about it and organize it, right? It's kind of like when you have a problem and you just want to avoid it. And then just one day you're like, all right, like I can't deal with this any longer. What do I got to do to fix this? Then we get to Saturday. The moon will still be in Sagittarius. It's going to make a square to Neptune. It will trine Venus, and then it will enter Capricorn, and then it'll trine Mercury. The lunar chances this week are funny because it's like one day nothing happens, and the next day a bunch of stuff happens. The moon making that square to Neptune, I think, is like a lack of vision, a lack of clarity on the vision, a lack of certainty around where you are going. Where is point B? You know, if you're traveling the 7 seas and you can't see land for a couple months, it's like, are we even going in the right direction? Is this even the right way? But this is where I get real deep with the astrology. And it's like, you know, our ancestors, and this is true for every culture, used the stars to navigate their lives, both metaphorically and literally. Astrology has been used in every culture for literally as far as history goes, which is pretty interesting to me. Not a lot of cultures always share too many things, but they use the stars to navigate the waters, to navigate the unknown, to explore. And I think as the moon squares, you know, Neptune, you may not know if you're going in the right direction, but as long as you, again, like with the Virgo stuff, it's like, as long as you stick to your astrolabe, stick to, like, you know, what you know in the sky, you don't have to see the final destination in order to know that you're going to get there. You just have to go and trust that. And then the moon trines Venus. Hey, you're on a pirate ship or you're sailing across the sea. Have a little fun, sing a little song, drink a little rum, whatever it is. I think the moon trining Venus while it's in Sagittarius is like, you may not know where you're going or where the destination is, but that doesn't mean you can't have fun. And I think the moon in Sag trining Venus retrograde is like, we know that things are changing in terms of what is fun, what is desirable, what we enjoy. And I believe that this is an opportunity to connect more with the new thing, right? To feel more like inspired to connect to the other things, right? It's the moon and Sag trying something new, trying something explorative, working on shifting your, you know, your mindset from being like, oh my God, this isn't fun. Where am I going to, like, how about I just have fun here in the moment? Then the moon will ingress into Capricorn. I'm super looking forward to this moon in Capricorn transit. Again, after the moon leaves that trine to Venus, have a little fun. Moon goes into Capricorn. Time to get serious. Time to be a little bit more detached from our emotions just to get shit done. And then it immediately trines Mercury. It's like, I mean, this moon in Capricorn transit is fucking awesome for getting shit done and just being like, what do I got to organize? What do I got to do? Saturday night, moon trines Mercury, getting organized, getting detailed, handling business. And then we go into Sunday. The moon will then make a sextile to Saturn. It will then trine Mars and trine Jupiter. Sunday is so fucking productive. It's insane to me. Moon is going to make this trine to Mars invert. I mean, it'll sextile Saturn too, where there's a level of like, again, hey, like, I can go with the changes, right? The moon's going to trine Mars and then trine Jupiter. Virgo, Capricorn, Taurus, grand trine, if you want to call it. It's time to, like, Sunday's just excellent for getting shit done, handling business, having the motivation to, because especially next week, and I'll talk about next week in a second, Mars trines Jupiter. It's like the more that we organize and the more that we detail, it's like the more that we see the fruits of our labor. It's like, you know, for example, when you're growing something like growing plants, it's like, it's amazing what tiny little changes you can make that just change everything. Like, and I've said this too about like music. It's like, if you're making a song and it sounds weird, it's like, maybe you just need to turn the EQ down, or maybe you just need to change the reverb. And it's like that little change can just absolutely make the world of a difference. And that's what's going on Sunday, in my opinion. And as long as you're just kind of like being about your business and taking it more seriously, I think there's a lot of awesome stuff to unlock that's going to, I think, really motivate you. So then we get to next week. We have Mars trining Jupiter. I mean, there's just something so motivating about that of like, yes, like, let me just do all these specific things. Let me organize myself. And you're just going to see the rewards of that much more faster than normal. We have the full moon in Aquarius. Boy, individuals are different than groups of people. That's what I'll say about that. We'll talk more about it, of course, next week. Mercury goes opposite Saturn next week. There are still challenges. And while we're ready to organize, there's still things that we don't know. And it's up to us to let it or not. It's like, are we going to let the unknown stop us, or are we going to just, you know, circumnavigate that and do what we do know? Mercury enters shadow next week. Once we have that Mercury-Saturn opposition, it's like, okay, there's some walls here, and now we have to review and reflect and kind of change our ideas about some stuff. So Mercury enters shadow next week. And then the sun squares Jupiter, which I'm not really fully convinced that that's bad. I think there's something about, like, I mean, I'll talk way more in depth about it next week, but I think there is something about gaining more confidence in a way that you didn't expect. Like, it didn't go according to your plan, but you still got the end result that you wanted anyway. So that's what I got for you guys. Let me know what you're excited for this week, what you're not excited for. Let me know what you're going through in your lives in the comments below. Make sure you like this video as well. And if you want to support this channel, and if you want access to live streams that I do every month, I do 2 live streams a month plus monthly rising sign horoscopes. Check out my Patreon, support the channel. And with that being said, I love and appreciate you guys, and I'll be seeing you next week.